44-22 win. Just handled the Arizona Cardinals. And, and a thing that we've been talking about a lot, what was the number? 46 carries?
Yeah, 46.
46 carries, because you always talk about the attempts, Mark, and how important that is. And they got in a great situation. And the one thing I would say, though, Mark, is that the other team knows they're going to load up on defense, right? I mean, they know when you get a huge lead, it's not like you're going to be throwing the ball around the yard. And I think they only threw it, twice in the second half?
Yeah.
Two times in the second half. So you are, facing like a big, heavy defense there. But the attempts are there, and that's something that you've always raved about in the running game.
Yeah, I've always believed in what that does for you in the passing game, what that does for you from a protection standpoint. When you can do that, ultimately you make the defense respect you in the passing game. And then all of a sudden, even in, drop back pass, you can create opportunities for yourself, as I always talk about taking the passive out of pass protection, right? I can up kick a 5-step drop and sell run. And because we're running it so well, you have to honor that. And then all of a sudden you have to restart your pass rush. And if I can get you to restart your pass rush, well, then you're done. You're not going to have production. So yeah, it's a big time move. And I had forgot as I was watching your guys' game today, I forgot that Rashid Shaheed had played for Kubiak a year ago in New Orleans. So seamless transition. I know I saw him have a jet sweep. I think he had a catch. But just really, really smart. I was saying this on my podcast today, on the Stinky Truth podcast. I talked about the Seattle Seahawks being one of the top 3 teams in the NFC right now. And if you look at just kind of how Mike Macdonald has done there and what he has brought to the table, and then you look at John Schneider, you're talking about potential coach of the year candidate and potential, GM of the year or executive of the year candidate with what they've been able to do or what they did and some of the decisions they've made and where they sit right now in the hierarchy of the NFC. So really impressive stuff in Seattle going on right now.
Mark, I know you've had the chance to meet Mike Macdonald and interact with John Schneider a good amount. What stands out to you about those two guys and what they've been able to do with backups on defense? They have a number of injuries on defense. What stands out about, I guess, what Macdonald's been able to do with plugging and playing guys in and them thriving in these situations?
Yeah, I think there's one, everybody is coached and everybody is coached to be disciplined. And and he said it to me in the meeting I had with him. I forget which game we were coming off of, but it was the Jacksonville game. And he had said, listen, man, our tackling was atrocious. And essentially I told the guys, if you don't tackle, if you do it that way, if you're diving at people's ankles, you will not play for me. Just understand this is the way it works. And so, like that no nonsense approach. And it's not a threat as much as it is a promise. This is how we do things. These are the standards that we play with. And then I think the other thing is, I think you have to be in lockstep with what you're trying to create. And John will, and I know Dave and John have a good relationship and they've talked a lot, but John has told me before, he's like, hey, listen, man, I'm not the X's and O's. I'm about personnel. Like I study personnel. And I think they're in lockstep in kind of what they want, what they're looking for, position by position. And I think that is so vital to creating a football team that fits what you're trying to coach and what you're trying to do, to make sure we have guys that have not only the right football character, and all those things are the most important things to me, but fit position by position what we are trying to accomplish. And so many teams are, they're getting this personnel and then they're doing that with the coaching staff and things just don't fit right. I think they've done a really good job in Seattle of understanding, here's how we want to build our team. These are the type of players we want, the type of character we want, the type of skill set we want. Let's go out and make those things happen. And I think you're seeing kind of the fruit of that vision and those two guys working in unison with one another.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, Mark, in that vein, that It seems like Mike Macdonald is one of those guys that just says the right words. He knows how to motivate guys. He knows what they need. And there was a quote where he was talking to Ty Okada, and he's like, hey, do all these things right, and the plays will come to you. And I'm wondering if you ever had a coach like that. I had one coach, Tom Catlin, and he didn't say hardly anything. He was just a very quiet guy. But when he did say something to me, it always made sense. And it seems like that's kind of what Mike Macdonald has going as far as a coach. You think of anybody like that? Was it like maybe Alex Gibbs or?
Yeah, I mean, I just had a lot of really good coaches. And the other thing about Alex Gibbs, he would say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And, respectfully, I could walk up to him after a meeting and go, the other guys may be doing that, but I ain't going to do that. I guarantee you that. Like that ain't going to happen. And ultimately, it was always one of those conversations. Well, okay, then give me the whys. And I go, because this, and this. And he'd be like, all right, that makes sense. You do what it is you think is best for you as a player. But I guarantee you one thing: you better block the guy, otherwise we're going to have an issue. And that was kind of the conversations that we would have, and it always seemed to work out well that way for me. I always thought the best coaches for me, just for us as an organization, were the guys who could keep it simple. And I think ultimately, if you really think about football, you're not just coaching all the guys on defense or all the guys on offense. You're really coaching to the dumbest kid in the class, right? Like there's always two or three dudes that you're like, all right, if we put this in and we have this check and we do this, like somebody's busting a coverage, somebody's busting an assignment, somebody's not going to block the right guy. And I always thought, anytime that we struggled or anytime that we didn't play up to our standard, it was because things got a little too complicated. And I think one of the things that I've seen from Seattle is we're going to do what we do. And like we'll make it look complicated to the offense, the opposing offense or defense for that matter. But we're gonna execute things the way we know how to execute them, and we're gonna be fairly simplistic in our approach. And I think for me that's the number one thing. If you want guys to play fast, you got to keep it simple, stupid. You got to say, hey man, this is how we're going to do it, and then you got to trust technique and leverage, and all those things are going to win more often than not, as opposed to, hey, we're going to trick the opponent. I just don't believe that you play your fastest and most aggressive style of football when you're trying to trick people.
Mark, do you believe in trap games? We were talking about this Cardinals game as one that was potentially a trap game for the Seahawks with the Rams looming, and they handled it with no problem. But then you look at someone like the Bills, and they lose the Dolphins after they had that big win over the Chiefs, and I think the Bucs next. Is a trap game a thing? And then how do some teams avoid them better than others?
Well, I think there's always, there's a human nature element to playing. That's just the way it is. And I know everybody and the fans want us to all be robots, but life is going on while you're playing. So there's always that element of, hey, we're playing really well. I think that the biggest thing is we're playing really well, or we're winning a lot of games, and the little things, the detailed things that you overcome during a win streak, those little detailed things that can get brushed over, like, hey man, we can't do this in a tight game or with a good opponent, and you're all like, yeah, oh yeah, we get it, we get it. And then those things rear their ugly heads and you lose a game. And then it's a teaching moment. The coach comes back in and says, hey, remember the last 3 weeks we said, or last 4 weeks or 5 weeks, we said, you can't do this, you can't do this can't do this. All these things are what cost us this football game. But I think part of that is human nature. And I think the maturity of a football team, the football kind of quote unquote character, all those things are what make the difference about not falling into those trap games. But again, we're all human. We all have things going on in our lives. It's, I mean, you make it as much about football as you can, but certainly there are other things that happen along the way, and you hope to avoid some of the pitfalls of those things, and you hope you have enough maturity on your football team to overcome those potential trap games. But it's hard to win in this league. And I tell you, the other thing about this league that's really interesting is we don't practice anymore. So
Yeah.
like it's really hard to be consistent and it's really hard to be good. That's why I think identity today in today's game is where there's less and less of identity. It's more and more scheming things up, less and less identity. I think it's even harder to be consistent in today's game than it was when Dave and I played.
Yeah, and Mark, to that point, because I totally agree with you. They just, there's a fine line between beating your guys up and actually going out and, practicing hard. But the Seahawks got an opportunity in the second half to kind of do that, right? In a game to really get, and what do we say, 46 total carries, and I would say the majority of them obviously were in the second half. And how much of an advantage was that? Even though you're facing like a heavy defense, but you got a chance to, with live reps in a game, really work on your run game. And how valuable is that?
It's huge. And then it becomes, what you lean into, like the combination blocks between, guard and tackle and tight end and center and guard, and you do those things over and over and over again, and you get the feel for it, and you get the footwork of it, and then all the scheme aspects are the things that if you're running tight zone, 3, 4, 5 times, and then you run duo, which is kind of a gap play without pullers, and then all of a sudden you're running power, and that double team is essentially the exact same. Like I always think about, Dave, getting guys to play the scheme as opposed to the individual blocks, right? And that's when you can get guys to over pursue, and you can get guys to really feel like, hey man, I can't get cut off, I can't get cut off, I can't get cut off. You're running tight zone, tight zone, tight zone, and then you wheel on their butts on power, and you're 3 gaps beyond where you're supposed to be, and the next thing you know, you got a breakout run. Those are all things that you feel when you do it enough. And the running backs get a feel for what the O-line is doing, and they start to see, the combination blocks. They see where the strength of the defense is versus the weakness of the defense, and how you're playing. And all those things to me are incredibly important, but they all take timing and reps and commitment. And in today's game, there's just a lack of that commitment usually. So to have a game where, DeMarcus Lawrence scores on 2 fumble recoveries for touchdowns, and to have a what was it, was it a 35-0, 28-0 lead in the first quarter, whatever it was, to be able to go to work on that stuff is invaluable for the Seahawks down the stretch.
Mark, what stands out to you about this week? We've started to talk about it already. There's been some disagreement about whether the players know ahead of time who they're going to play. Some listeners have told Dave he's wrong, that they certainly know they're playing the Rams, but now they are playing the Rams this week. And with these two teams and how good they look, what jumps out to you about this matchup?
I think one of the things that makes the Rams, obviously Stafford's playing really good. They've got a really good defensive front seven. They can really get after the quarterback. They can really get after the pass rush. So that run game is going to be imperative. I think what makes them the most unique team for me that I've watched, and I think they're the best team in the NFC right now, is the amount of 2, 3 tight end formations they run, and how they make the defense, put the defense in a bind, because all their tight ends, when you watch them, they're all about 6'5". They're all probably about 245, 250. They can all run. They can all block. They can block in the passing game as well. In a day and age, where football fans are like, I don't need a tight end to block as long as he can run routes and be, exposed linebackers in coverage. And I'm like, you guys don't understand how football works. All their tight ends will block people, and it makes it so difficult. Dave will tell you, you get into 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends, man, you're in heavy personnel. And all of a sudden they say, okay, now we're going to throw the ball out of this. And they're running their tight end, on your big hog molly linebacker. Like they've got an advantage. So it makes them a very unique offense. And I'm telling you, that's the thing, is I've watched them on tape, that they just cut people up in that. And then obviously with that ability, you're getting a lot of one-on-ones on the outside with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. So they're a problem right now.
What do you think about firing head coaches in the middle of the season? Brian Daboll getting the axe, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a really good time to do that. But I never really understood that. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? My understanding was on the plane back from Denver after they gave up that huge lead in the fourth quarter that the Giants were ready to fire him, and then um, apparently he talked the owner out of it,
Hmm.
and then you give up another big fourth quarter lead, and the rest is history. I I have a tough time with it simply because I thought when he made the move to Jackson Dart and when Cam Scatterbo was healthy, man, they were playing really good, and the quarterback was actually really dynamic. Now, unfortunately, and this is how we went to the playoffs with Daniel Jones that one year. They ran Daniel Jones on designed runs and scrambles, but he'd get about 10 to 14 carries a game between design runs and scrambles. And he was doing that with Jackson Dart, but Jackson Dart didn't have the sense in his head to keep himself healthy, right? Like he's trying to make big plays and he's a rookie. And you know how you are when you're 22, Dave. You just think, hey man, I'm indestructible.
Mhm.
Um, and I learned very early in my career, my rookie year, as a matter of fact, when I picked up a fumble and ran with it, that you guys on the other side of the ball are angry. You're very angry, and that was one of those things where I said to myself, as I laid at the bottom of the pile, kind of licking my wounds, like note to self: don't ever do that again, dumbass. Like that is not like that ball attracts a lot of attention, and I thought I was going to score, and DBs run really fast, and when they're running fast and you're not, they when they hit you, it stings, stings
Stings the
quite a bit.
nostrils.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it. I mean, how did you enjoy watching Russ come in and take two sacks in a critical moment of the game?
Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
Uh,
Oh, that made my day. Um, I mean, man, roll out. You got the bench route is open. You got leverage. Don't throw it. Just take a 2 yard sack, running toward the sideline. And then third down, you got an edge presence. You got a walk up linebacker. You know you can't block the edge. That's your guy. And what do? Snap the ball and roll right into him. Okay. It was the most
yeah.
Rust thing I've ever seen.
Oh.
It made my day.
Uh, Mark, appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks,
We'll talk to
buddy.
you next
See you
week.
guys.
All
Yep.
right. Fox NFL analyst Mark Schlereth. You do hear him here every Monday.